Okay, what happened? What happened is I'm trying to make sure I have a quiet background. And normally I do stuff when I'm home by myself, but I wanted to go ahead and get this done. I don't like how this camera thing is. I wanted to go ahead and get this done before I read my next book. Wow, I feel like this is way too close up on me. Tech issues, right? For people that are not tech people. Okay, so just getting into it without so much humming and hawing and complaining. I am making a conscious decision to read more books instead of being like on my phone, on Netflix, any kind of screen. Hey, gaming mommy. Oh, I know who that is. Hey, hello, hello, hey, girl. Okay, so hey, AJ. So, long story short, I may ruin this, but I'm going to come to it with an adult perspective. I don't know how many people actually read this book, but it just came out last year and it's done very well. I got it when I was traveling. It's a New York Times bestseller. It's a black female author. She is from Nigeria, but she lives in London or England. Abidari is the author. She's fairly young. It doesn't even seem like she's 40 years old, and the main character in this is Aduni. So let's just get right to it. Reading is good for your mind. That's number one because there had been a word that I have been looking for an extremely long time, and that word I know I have worn my boyfriend out with the word epistemology. Just how your mind constructs thought is so important, and it relates to this book because this book is written in broken or non-standard English. As it goes on, it gets better, but that is a part of the main character's story. Even like the title, Girl with a Louding Voice, is the incorrect English word. There's no such thing as louding, but she is trying to learn English as a form of education and a way to promote herself because her mother told her that if you have education, then you will have a louding voice and the right to make your own choices. I don't know if I want to do like an official book club or not. I do have another book club, another book that I'm going to read for next month, which is also popular. But I kind of want to do like a book club, like as a way to just like have a mental break from everything that's going on in the world and a way to tune out some of the unnecessary chaos because I always say there are so many voices on social media and it's important not to entertain foolishness for too long. It's like because sometimes, like for me, I can watch foolishness and it be entertaining, and I understand that it's foolishness. But then when I think about people are really feeding their minds and their intellect with a level of foolishness all day, and it's becoming their form of entertainment. I can't get behind it, and I can see how subpar behavior is becoming mainstream because people are watching it for entertainment where people are like, oh, I'm just ghetto for fun, which that is fine, that is okay, but it's like, are you anything else though for fun though, so. And I think that I wanted to hurry up and do this book chat because I'm about to start reading another book, and I just saw some topics and I was so passionate about the topics of other people, and I was like, but that's not a good use of my brain. That's not a good use of my energy. Is to get down in these lowbrow kind of conversations, which shouldn't even be a conversation, in my opinion, in 2021 when there's so much like information out there and energy outlets out there. So I chose to read a book, and what is so special about this book, and I think what is making people get into it, is the amount of trauma that the main character experiences. It is very shocking to me that a lot of people have not really experienced trauma in their life. This is an African story about an African girl set in Africa by someone who is from Africa but now lives in a more cultural environment, like diverse environment with white people. One of the main things for me as an adult that I take away from it, outside of the trauma, because trauma will keep you page turning, right? Because you want to know what's going to happen next. But a really important takeaway that I think on an adult level that people might not see is that there are a lot of villains in this book and a lot of mistreatment in this book, and there's not one white character in this book. It's very interesting how we as Black people, no matter whether we're African American, we create these communities of trauma. Like we create these whole, not even a community of trauma, but a language behind it, a lifestyle behind it, a truth behind it. One of the main things is that the main character does not want to get married. She wants to have an education, be her own person. She doesn't want to have children. When she explains to one of her peers that she's not happy to be married, she's not happy to be in the position, it's horrible, it's terrible. The girl tells her, "Oh, you're just lying, you're just joking, you're trying to like, just keep your high standing position." And the main character, Aduni, is telling the truth. It's not what it's cracked up to be. And even though she is speaking her truth, her peer cannot accept it because for her it's a really horrible, violent, almost, I can't say almost, a rape situation in a relationship that she is married into. If you're easily triggered, this is not a book for you. But let's just talk about like triggers because that's something that I am really against. It's like, oh, you're so triggered. If you're triggered about like the idea of human trafficking, about rape, about child marriage, about child slavery, this is not the book for you. I would say that you have to remove triggers from your life. Hey, RK, you have to remove the idea of things triggering you from your life because just because you're triggered by it doesn't negate the fact that these things really exist, right? Child labor, child brides, people being forced into marriages and not wanting to have sex and almost feeling like that they are being taken advantage of or being oppressed by the institution of marriage or even by their family. And it is really important for me, I feel like, to create a space where we, and I'll say we as women, and especially as Black women, really look at the environments that we are creating for the people that come behind us. Because even as we sit and we look at mainstream television, whether it be Basketball Wives, Love and Hip Hop, all your trash television that's targeted towards Black women, it is this idea that when we get together, we create a nasty, oppressive, insulting, just you cannot come from underneath me, you will be beneath me type of environment. And this character, she's a 14-year-old girl who is bounced from home to home because she doesn't have an education and she is oppressed. She does not have any money and she finds herself in very oppressive, and I can't say that word enough, but subservient kind of relationships. And I think going back to the way that we create knowledge for ourselves, I sometimes do not sympathize with people who are feeling oppressed or feeling trapped because I feel like you have a way out. Like you can like just leave, go to the store and don't come back, like just keep running. Like in this story she's done it before, but then when she finds herself in another oppressive situation, she kind of like makes a home of it and stays naive towards it. I don't know, just for comfort, just for like a glimmer of hope that things could be better. And it's kind of interesting to me. The best thing that this author does is she does a slow reveal of time about what year you're in. Because most of the book, I thought it was like way back in the day because you're talking about people who don't have running water and doing this child marriage and all these religious ceremonies. But then when she goes to the city, you're automatically teleported into like, no, this is modern day, 2014. So I feel like that you have to be very conscious of my new thing of how your mind constructs knowledge. And this particular book, she thinks that if she learns English, that is like the height of education. If she continues school, that is the height of education. But she learns that English is just another language, and that even people that speak English have the same heartache and take the same abuses that she takes, especially as women. And that's why I don't understand how women, and let me just say, especially Black women, can put each other down and oppress each other so much when we come from such a history of that. Here, this is not a slavery story. This is an African culture story of this is our custom. It seems like that the religion is more Muslim based, where they in the book value marriage, right? And they value the dowry that comes with that, so that you can pass that dowry to your family so that they can live a better life. But in her case, she's married into a house where the man has more than one wife, like two other ones, and only one is friendly to her and the other one is unfriendly and wants to fight her. she moves on from there and has another situation where she's in a submissive. She's never the cream of the crop. She's always the person that is down. Like she's always the bottom of the heap. Because she's 14 years old, I do kind of like forgive some of her naiveness about situations, but at a certain point, I think the age gets thrown out the window if you find yourself in trauma after trauma. You have to decide, is trauma my normal, or is there something about that's not quite right? And she talks about like how she gets a certain feeling about certain things where she knows somebody's about to attack her or about to assault her, and she kind of, I don't know, she kind of like just runs, like she doesn't completely runs away, she just runs out of the situation, but she still remains in these households until it's like forced upon her that she can't live there anymore. um Another thing that, so I talked about trauma, I talked about how our minds create thought, I talked about how black female groups do tend to create these hostile, negative, oppressive systems within themselves. The one of the characters that a lot of people talk about in this book is Big Mama, who is like a madam. She's a black woman who has like her own business, who has it all. But what else does she have? You know, the overall stereotype of a man that is not good to her, who is unkind to her, who is using her for her money, and she's not beautiful, and she's just mean, evil, and bitter. And I hate that. I hate that that is the picture of, um, a woman, a black woman in charge, but there are other black women who are also on her level, but every single woman in the book is diminished by her relationship to a man, whether that be to have his children or to need his money. And I think for me, living as an American black woman and reading something like this is like, wow, look how we as free minded, able, can vote, can rely on ourselves, how many of us try to enslave ourselves to men, or diminish ourselves for the idea of a man. In this case, she kind of refutes that and really tries to educate herself, even though she does not have all the means to do it. For me, I didn't really enjoy the book like how most people are just like absolutely going crazy about it, but that's because I'm an adult and I've had a lot of trauma in my own life, so I understand, like, to me trauma is not shocking at all. Like, what is more shocking and appealing to me is how you overcome it, and not just by running away or not just by leaving, but what process in your mind, like what clicked or what switched. I think like the author missed out on a big opportunity, like one of the main storylines that the main character ran from. Like, I wish that they would have told that story of what happened to Aduni's family and what happened to all the characters and how that played out, because to me that is more telling about how your actions have consequences, but the author kind of like skipped over that and left that whole part out of the plot. So I don't understand why this is a New York Times bestseller in that regard. And also, um, I could tell that the author had not had this life experience, because when you are a person that has experienced trauma or oppression, no matter what your grade level of English or dialect is, you have so many nuggets of wisdom that were lost or missed in this book. And it was absolutely true. The author of this book actually was never a maid or a servant, but she was the person who grew up with maids and servants. So that definitely took away from it for me. But there is a religious context in here as well. They always throw that in books about us. Is that how the less educated we are, the more likely that we are to gravitate towards religions and myths and ceremony and prayer and a spiritual life and singing and song. And then once we are more sophisticated, we kind of turn our back on those kind of customs. It's interesting how the author weaves that back into the book when the main sophisticated character, Big Mama, has her fall. She wants that song again and she wants that comfort again. So, I don't know. I think overall, though, epistemology, how you are coming to what is true for you, is so different. We can come from the same place and do the same things and have different takeaways and different ideas of what is true, what is good, what is sustainable, when to leave and when to stay. I cannot understand how you can be a servant and go to market and go to the store and then go and take the groceries back to an abusive environment. Like, but I have my own relationship around abuse and oppression that would not allow my mind to go back to a situation like that. But, if I was a 14-year-old child who didn't really know much and who, was afraid if I got kicked out of an abusive situation where I would go next, I don't know what my thought process would be, but I see a big correlation in how we as women, and I can only speak for black women, are selecting to be oppressed, selecting not to be educated just for the sake of community or for the sake of, well, if I wait long enough, something good is going to happen. I'm going to meet some kind of connection and it's all going to work out. In the book, it kind of does work out, but one big thing that I do not like, and I know it's like, so, like if you see other reviews about this, people are going to praise this book left and right. One big thing that I do not like is the title, A Girl with a Louding Voice. She had a chance to use her louding voice, and to me, she did not use it, but then it makes me self-reflect, like, who's to say when your voice is the loudest or the strongest? Sometimes it's not by the words that you use. Maybe sometimes it is by being silent so that you can move easier and not to make trouble for yourself. Because that's a big theme in this book too, is she is always being told to be a good girl, to not make trouble, to be quiet, to work hard. But this whole concept of not only is she beaten, traumatized, oppressed, but then she's supposed to not make trouble during the process. To me, she still kind of makes trouble. Well, not really. She's still sassy. A lot of people like the book because they say she's fiery and that no matter what happens to her, she keeps her humor and she just keeps going with it. But I don't know. It's a light read for quarantine, I think, unless you're like easily offended by things, which I am not easily offended. Oh no. I have another book. So basically, how I pick my books is that I do not. I actually follow book people who read books and give books for free for review, and I see what everybody's reading, but I don't watch reviews because I like to be surprised about what the book is. So my next book that I'm going to read is also going to be a fiction book. I ordered it off Amazon. Like everybody is like reading this book. And it is going to be this one. Another New York Times bestseller. I've always wanted to be a writer, and I'm going to have to figure out why I like to read New York Times bestsellers. I think because it's supposed to be like the cream of the crop or whatever. So we'll see. I like how people play with stories and the messages that novels send. Like, before, I would never read a novel before quarantine. I haven't read a novel since I was like a young girl. I just came from one of my associates, co-workers, friends' house, there I say, like loose friends, and she's also reading as well. And we both agree that there's something very relaxing about turning off the screens and just getting back to the page. And there's so much you can learn from reading, even novels, because you're reading somebody else's story and somebody else's perspective. That helps you to get outside of your own perspective. And if you are really a critical thinker, you're able to think about and question the perspectives that you bring to a story. Me, as a black woman, not girl, but woman, I'm going to read a book about trauma, about rape, about physical abuse, about doing things for money, about staying in terrible situations so much differently than someone who feels like, oh, well, her husband sucked, her boss sucked. Oh, she was involved in human trafficking, and for me, like, human trafficking wasn't even the word. I guess she was like low key human traffic, but girl, you went to like the market and ran down the street and all this other kind of stuff to visit a neighbor. Like, she wasn't like shackled or chained down. A gun wasn't like put to her head. I tried to listen to this audiobook with the characters' voices. I think because of the broken English that they use, I don't really like audiobooks. Now, somebody told me that this one, Such a Fun Age, is really good on audiobook. I don't know. So it's I read for the information and the perspective. Yeah, if people have probably if they're reading the audiobooks with accents and in the broken tongues, then it probably will be like distracting. Even when I was reading it, the non-standard English or broken English was kind of annoying to me at some points, but it does get better. And the reason why the English gets better is because she starts to educate herself. You start to hear her tell more facts about Nigeria and about Lagos. And I didn't know that Nigeria was like the biggest country in Africa, that like 1 out of 7 African people are Nigerian just because Nigeria just takes up a lot of the population. And Lagos is one of the wealthiest cities. It has a lot of black millionaires, and but there's a lot of corruption in the government and a lot of misplaced wealth. Um, so yeah, I think I said just about all about the book because I thought I was just gonna come over here and just spoil it and bash it and things like that. But I think it is a good takeaway. I do really encourage people who write black books about women especially, and us that read and take in information, that we get away from this narrative that to be in a community of black women means that you will be belittled, you will be abused, somebody's going to be running around with your man, like like I just feel like how can we escape that? Like that narrative is pushed on us so much, and it should be so tired. It should be so played out. It should be like we're done with that narrative. It should be that, but it just keeps rearing its ugly head. And I feel like that's something that we intellectual people need to push to eradicate and say, no, we're done with that. That's in the 8-track in a digital world. But it looks like that my dinner is coming out, and I have had enough of this chat. So if you read this book, let me know. If you want to read this book with me, I don't even know, like I guess I would do like a Zoom and ask questions and have like more of a discussion and do like videos around it. But I do plan on, because I read pretty fast, I can finish a book like in a week or 3 days. But I want to read some nonfiction as well. We shall see what happens, but this is my next read, and hopefully you are doing something to elevate your mind outside of the crazy times that we're in. Because elevating your mind is something that is good for your soul and that can never be taken away from you, and that will always push everything about you up. You know, if you feel like things are not moving in your life, it is good to push your mind and your spirit up above the crazy, and to really to gain your own perspective. I was listening to this Arthur talk, and she was just saying how we all should be writing our own books right now. Thank you. We all should be telling our story right now. And isn't that like so crazy, because the world is changing around us, and certain people later than us will have no concept of what we came from or why we think the way we do unless we tell our stories. And that doesn't matter what color, creed, or gender that you are. And so that's kind of like an interesting thought. Like if you, especially now, if you were to write your story right now in 2021 from your whole life, it wouldn't even have to be your story, any story, a story. Like, wow, what would that really like look like? Like, would you be writing it like back in like the 80s and 90s when things were like completely different? Or would you try to incorporate the changes that we're seeing now? It's kind of mind blowing when you think about it, because we are definitely going to be in the face of like so many different relics of things that are gone by that it's like it's going to be crazy. Like we're definitely going to be the people that saw that major shift, but it's up to us as the individuals to really give the realistic interpretation for us, because what's real to you may not be real to me, and vice versa. So everyone is changing, and you can hear everything going off. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let me know if you want to do a book club and do a Zoom thing where we talk and we discuss. I don't know. I think it'd be kind of fun. Let me know if you know any good book clubs to join. That would be good. And I will be going from here. Thank you guys so much and enjoy the rest of your night.